Hello students, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to learn about plasma membrane. What do you mean by plasma membrane? Plasma membrane is otherwise called as cell membrane. It acts as an universal semi-permeable outer boundary of all living cells. It protects the cell's interior by controlling the movement of substance in and out of the cell. This picture clearly shows the structure of a cell membrane. So this cell membrane, it is found in all living cells, which separates the interior of the cell from the outer environment. That is, the cell organelles which is present inside the cell is surrounded by the cell membrane. It acts as a barrier to protect the cell organelles from the outer environment. And this cell membrane mainly contains phospholipids, carbohydrate chain, cholesterol and membrane proteins. And what are the functions of these structures on the cell membrane? These phospholipids, it acts as a barrier to prevent water-soluble substances which moves freely across the cell membrane. This phospholipid has hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tail. That means hydrophilic head means it is water loving and hydrophobic tail is it is water hating. Okay, and this membrane proteins, it act as a channels to transport the molecules inside the cell, and this cholesterol, it gives the structural integrity, and the carbohydrate chain also, it acts as a marker to recognize each other cells. So there are various models has been proposed to detail explain the structure of the plasma membrane. So we can look into the models one by one. The first one is lipid bilayer model. So this model was proposed by the scientists Gotter and Grendel. They said that the membrane is a double layer of phospholipids with hydrophobic tails facing inward and hydrophilic heads facing outward. So in this picture you can clearly see the phospholipid bilayer and their arrangements. Next one is the sandwich model. So this model was proposed by Daniel and Davison. They suggested that the lipid bilayer is sandwiched between two layers of proteins. So this picture clearly shows the sandwich model of plasma membrane. That is, phospholipid is present here. The red color shows the phospholipids and the green color it shows the proteins. So the phospholipid bilayer is embedded between the two proteins, which we see as a sandwich. So it is the sandwich model of cell membrane. The next one is the unit membrane model. It was proposed by the scientist Robertson. He proposed that all cellular membranes share a similar consistent structure appearing as a trilaminar. That means it will be a three-layered structure under electron microscopy. So this is the unit membrane model. Here you can see the phospholipid layer as well as the protein on the head of the phospholipids. Okay, so it is a trilaminar structure, is three-layered structure of plasma membrane. The last one is the fluid mosaic model. It was proposed by Singer and Nicholson in 1972, and this is the accepted model. It describes the membrane as a mosaic of proteins, lipids and carbohydrates that are not fixed on the cell membrane but they move laterally, giving it a fluid nature. So this picture clearly shows the structure of a plasma membrane. Here you can see proteins, glycoprotein, glycolipids, transmembrane proteins, cholesterol, carbohydrate chain, hydrophobic heads and hydrophilic tail. Everything you can see here, and each one has a different function, and they are not stick on to the surface of the membrane, but they can move laterally, giving it a fluid nature because they need to transport the substance in and out of the cell. So the fluid mosaic model is the accepted model for plasma membrane. Now we can look into the functions of plasma membrane. What is the function of this plasma membrane? So the function of the plasma membrane is, first one is selective permeability. That means it regulates the entry and exit of ions and molecules, ensuring cells receive nutrients, and it can exclude the toxins out of our body. The second function is transport. That means it facilitates the transport of water molecules and ions inside and outside of a cell. So here diffusion, osmosis and the active transport comes under this. Active transport means it requires energy for the transport of molecules in and out of the cell. And passive transport means it does not require any energy for the transport of molecules inside and outside of the cell. Third one is cell signaling and communication. So the cell signals each other. So one cell, it gives a signal to the other cell. So how it happens? It happens through the receptors which is present on the plasma membrane. So these receptors, it receives the chemical signals from the foreign molecules, that may be hormones or enzymes, and it transmits to the other cell. So the transmission takes place with the help of the proteins which are present on the surface of the membrane. The fourth one is structural integrity. It provides shape and it protects the cytoplasm and other cell organelles, and it links to the cytoskeleton. And last one is cell recognition. The carbohydrate markers which are seen on the top of the plasma membrane, it allows immune cells to distinguish self from the foreign cells. So the carbohydrate chain which is present on the plasma membrane, it helps in the cell recognition. This picture clearly shows the selective permeability of phospholipid bilayer. So the first one here, the gases and the fat soluble vitamins can easily move into the cell through the plasma membrane. Some small uncharged pore molecules, that is water, urea, ethanol and glycerol, they can transport inside the cell, but few of them can be rejected. Large uncharged polar molecule, that is glucose and sucrose, they cannot move inside by their own. It needs some mediators to be transported inside the cell. And also for the ions, it cannot be transported self into the cell. It needs some mediators, the channels, protein channels, so that it can be transported inside the cell. This one is diffusion. So if the concentration of the molecule is higher in the outer environment, it moves freely inside the cell, so that it becomes equilibrium inside and outside of the cell. This process we call as diffusion. So the molecule diffuses from higher concentration to lower concentration across the cell membrane to achieve equilibrium. The next one is osmosis. As all we know that the plasma membrane is a semi-permeable cell membrane, so it allows the transport of water molecules from outside the environment into the cell. This movement we call it as osmosis, and it can be explained in both animal and plant cell. So if you place a cell in isotonic solution means outside and inside of a cell, it will be equilibrium, the water molecule will be equilibrium. So the cell appears to be normal, animal cell, and the plant cell also it appears to be normal, that we call as flaccid. When it comes to hypertonic solution, if the water molecule outside the cell is higher, it moves into the lower concentration. That means it moves inside the cell. So when the cell absorbs more water, the animal cell, it becomes lysed. That means it bursts, and in plant cell, the plant cells become turgid. It does not burst because the plant cell has a cell wall, so it doesn't burst. The third one is hypertonic solution, that is the water molecules will be low in the environment other than the cell. So the water molecules from the cell, it moves out to the environment to make it equilibrium. So in this case, the animal cell becomes shrinked, and the plant cell also it will be shrinked, that we call as plasmolyzed. Now active transport, as I already told you, osmosis and diffusion, it comes under passive transport. That means it does not require energy. In active transport, the molecules move from lower concentration to higher concentration, and here it requires energy. The energy is given by ATP. So these are the membrane channels which helps in the transport of ions across the cell membrane. Next one is cell signaling. So in the plasma membrane, we can see the receptors. These are the proteins which are present in the plasma surface of the plasma membrane, and it recognizes the messengers, that is ligand or chemicals. So when it gets attached to the receptors, it gives signal inside the cell. And here also the important function of plasma membrane is phagocytosis, pinocytosis, and receptor mediated endocytosis. Phagocytosis means if the plasma membrane is encountered with a larger particle or any other foreign particle, the plasma membrane, it surrounds the particle and it pulls inside the cell, forming a vacuole, that we call as phagocytosis. If it pulls the liquid molecule inside the cell, we call it as pinocytosis. And receptor mediated means the ions, or we call as ligand, Okay, so it will be recognized by the receptor present in the plasma membrane and it pulls inside with the coated vesicle and it will be transported inside the cell. This phagocytosis can be clearly explained in amoeba. So when amoeba come in contact with the foreign particle, it surrounds the foreign particle with the help of the membrane and it take it inside. So here it is digested, it forming a phagosome. So in the phagosome, it fuses with lysosome. Lysosome, it has the acid enzymes, digestive enzymes. So it digests the thing, bacterium or any other foreign particle, and the last, the digested particles will be released from the cell. As well as in human cells, in the immune cells, you can see this type of phagocytosis. So the neutrophil, which is an WBC cell, when it encountered with the bacteria, a pathogen, it gets attached with the receptor present on the outer surface of the membrane and it will be engulfed inside, and along with the lysosome, the bacteria within a phagocytic vacuole, it will be killed by the enzyme produced by the lysosomes, and all the digested particles will be excreted outside. Hope you understand about the function of the plasma membrane. Thank you for your listening and happy learning.